Let's take a look at an example where we need to build a bar chart. Okay, so here the population in Park City is made up of children, working age adults, and retirees. The table below shows the 3 age groups, the number of people in the city in each age group, and the proportion of people in each age group. Construct a bar graph showing the proportions. So before we actually get to constructing the bar graph, notice that what we have here is a frequency table with relative frequencies. We don't necessarily have those titles in our header column here or in our header row, but that's what it is. This is telling us how many people are in each category, right? That's the frequency column. This is telling us what percentage each column makes up. That means that's a relative frequency column. We've given them different names, but that's what they in fact are. Okay. Now, for this example, it's asking us to construct a bar graph showing the proportions. We have a couple columns here. We need to make sure we choose the right one. We are interested in the bar graph showing the proportions. Okay, so we're interested in that last column. Okay, so what do we need for a bar graph? We need to know the categories, right? That's how we label each bar. And we need to know the heights of the bars. So that's going to be this one. So this is going to be the categories, or the names of the different categories. And this will be the heights of the different bars. Okay. Now, rather than constructing this directly ourselves, we're going to let the computer do the hard work for us. Okay. In R, we can tell it to construct a bar chart using the bar plot function. So we say bar plot, and then we need to tell it the relevant information. So open parenthesis, and we tell it what it needs to know. So what it needs to know are going to be the height of the bars, okay, and the names of the bars. So we are going to tell it these things. So let's see how that works in practice, okay? So I'm going to pull my calculator over here. So first off, I'm going to identify what the heights and the names are. So let's do the heights first. Let me do it this way. So we're going to put the heights in a list. So we start with C. C says we're combining these values into a list, and then we open the parenthesis, and that way what's in between the parenthesis is the values that we're combining in a list. Okay? So if we look at this table, we want the heights of the bars reflected by this last column, the proportion of the population. So we'll have 19.11%, 43.37%, and 37.52%. Okay? So 19.11%, 43.37%, and 37.52%. Okay? Those are going to be the heights of our bars. And I've combined them into this list. Notice I've separated the values with commas. When we're writing out a list, we put commas in between to say, okay, now we're going on to the next number, okay, or the next value. I'm going to give this list a name, just so we don't have to write out this big long list every time, okay? I'm going to name it based on where it's coming from. So this is the proportion of the population. So I'm going to call this list proportions. So at the beginning, I'll write proportions, and then I'll put an equal sign. So that says we're creating a new variable, we're calling it proportions, and this is its value. Or in other words, this list, this is what we're naming it. This is the name of that list. So now whenever the computer sees the word proportions, it'll say, ah, I know what you're talking about. You're talking about this list of values. Okay, so that's going to be the heights for my bar chart. Now I need the names or the labels of each bar. Okay, so the names are going to be the age groups. Okay, and I'm going to put this in a list too. So I'm going to combine these values into a list. And the age groups are children, working age adults, and retirees. Okay, so notice a couple things here. First off, I start off with the C again because I want to combine the values into a list. The values I'm interested in are between the parentheses. So all the values between the parentheses are the ones that are going in the list. Okay? I did something different this time. I used these double quotes. Most of the time when the calculator sees just plain words, if I took out the double quotes, the calculator is going to look and say, okay, what do you mean by children? What thing have you called children? Just like we called this list proportions, the calculator is going to try to find something called children. And then it's going to say, whoa, you never told me what children mean, so I'm going to say that this is a mistake and tell you that you have made an error. Okay, I'm not going to run this correctly. When we put it in double quotes, that tells the calculator, don't try to understand this. This is just a label. Okay, it's not something for you to interpret. Okay, so whenever we use a plain label that we don't want the calculator to try to understand, we put it in double quotes. Just like in the above, we use commas to separate the different values. Okay, notice the commas are outside the double quotes. If I put it inside the double quote, the computer is going to think that is part of the label. So we put the comma outside the double quote, say, okay, this is not part of the label anymore. This is telling you that I'm going on to the next thing in the list. Okay, so I have 3 labels, which means 3 sets of double quotes. 1 set of double quotes for each label. Okay, I'm going to give this a name. We called this age groups in the chart, so I'm going to do that. Notice I didn't put a space here. The computer wouldn't understand a space. When you name something, it has to be one word, okay? So I use a capital G in this case to kind of help me visualize where the break would be. But to satisfy the computer, I can only do one word. So I've made my list. This is the names of the different categories. And I've decided to name this list of things age groups. So now whenever I use this word in the calculator, it'll know, this is the list you're talking about. Okay? One more thing to notice, the 2 lists correspond. They're in the same order. So children, the proportion of children was 19.11%. The proportion of working age adults was 43.37%. Retirees, 37.52%. It's important that you keep them in the same order. First with first, second with second. That's how the computer is going to know which bar is which height. Okay? Okay. Now we have the important stuff out of the way. We have the heights of each bar. We've called that list proportions. We have the names of all the bars, the category names. We've called that list age groups. So now we can use that bar plot function. Okay? This is going to create a bar chart with this information. So I'm first going to tell it the height of the bars, and I've stored that in proportions. That's what I've named my heights. That's the variable name, proportions. Okay? So this is telling the computer, the computer is saying, okay, what are the heights of the bars? Oh, that's this list, which I've called proportions. Okay, comma, and then we need to tell it what the labels or the names of the different bars are. Okay, so the computer is saying, what are the names of the bars? And I'm going to say, I've stored that in the list, which I've called age groups. Okay. And then end parenthesis, close the parenthesis, so that I say, okay, this is all the information you need to create that bar chart. Okay, I click evaluate, and it gives me all this information. If I scroll down, I do indeed get a bar chart. Notice each bar has labeled with the labels that we've given it. Children, working age adults, retirees. The way the computer knows is because that's what we told it. Children, working age adults, retirees. Notice the heights of the bars. This is just below 20, so that's 19.11%. The second bar, working age adults, is a little bigger than 40. That's the 43.37%. And the retirees, that's close to 40, just below 40. That's a 37.52%. Okay, so it did all that work automatically of drawing it out. All we had to do was give it the information. Okay? And then it used the information we gave it right here. We told it what the heights of the bars were. We told it what the names of the bars were. And it said, okay, I can use that and I can make a bar chart. And it did it. Okay?